I will be this weekend in Athens, Georgia. I have not been to a Georgia home game in a little while. I've seen Georgia on the road many times. I've seen them in neutral sites many times. It's been a little while since I got down to Georgia for a game, and the whole new Saturday tour fueled by Quick Trip is allowing it to happen. And I just want to ask you, have you seen the line on this game? What do you think it is? Well, if you're watching, or you already know. But if you had to close your eyes and you set a line on this, based on what you've seen from Georgia and Tennessee, would you have guessed Georgia minus 9.5? What do we learn from this line? What I learn is that a lot of the intangibles and the tangibles that have created the mystique of what Georgia football is under Kirby Smart, odds makers believe are still there. There is this floor, it's really high for Georgia, through which they've not fallen. Like even Georgia at their worst, they've been crash-proof. They've been disaster-proof. Like what's happening to FSU would never happen to Georgia in a million years. We all know that. You've been able to count on them, though. If there is a setback, and there hadn't been very frequently, but if there is, you can count on them to respond emphatically. And a lot of that, and a lot of Georgia at home, a lot of that's been bottled up, and we've learned a lot. They assume it's still there. 9.5 is a big number. And Nico's playing. Nico Iamaleava is playing. So this is not a line that's indicative of Tennessee's quarterback being out. He's baked into this. 9.5. Let's dive into this game. It's got to be an identity game for Georgia. I was just down in Baton Rouge last week, and coming off the field, that's what a lot of those Bama coaches were saying. That's an identity game, man. That's what we should be. Well, if Georgia wins this game Saturday and we're down there on the field and the coaches are walking off and the players are walking off, that's what they should be yelling. Identity game. So that brings me to this question. Georgia fans can answer it for all I care. I just love an answer. What is Georgia's offensive identity? What is it? They're 104th in rush yards per game. They've had 2+ turnovers in 5 of their last 6 games. The wide receiver position's already not great, but they've been dropping balls. There is no game-changing pass catcher on this team. It was Brock Bowers last year. The tight end position does not even feature one of those guys. Carson Beck's been much less effective. I think partly that's on his shoulders and partly it's because of the cumulative effect of what I just said. Nevertheless, Bama was a mess too. I'm going to go back and reference that game last week because I think there's a corollary to this one. Bama had been a mess. Bama had looked disastrous offensively. But then they found themselves last week, didn't they? And to them, finding themselves was, let's run Milroe down their throat. Let's run it 48 times against LSU if we have to. Now, that may not be what Georgia has to do here, but whatever that identity is, there's no excuse for them to be in the 100s in rush yards per game. There's no reason for them to be turning the ball over like this. And you know good and well it's not that Kirby Smart has forgotten how to emphasize ball control and how to emphasize a strong, powerful ground game. It's just that hasn't clicked with them this year. Maybe it's personnel to some degree, but Georgia's personnel in the worst years is still the envy of most of the country. So you will never convince me that it's just a poverty roster down there and, oh, well, we'll chalk this one up as a lost season and wait till next year. You just need the click game. Like Bama had last week, you need that click game. And if Georgia gets it, Georgia will win this game. If Georgia gets that, then this point spread makes sense. Is this the best defense they've faced? Because it's either them or Ole Miss last week. Texas was really good on the road as well, but Texas allowed Georgia to set up in really favorable field positions, so that entire game was kind of thrown out of whack. Tennessee's top 20 against the run and against the pass. They can probably, given what we've seen from Georgia so far this year, they can probably do what Ole Miss did last week and stop the run with like a standard box or even a light box, which you should never be able to say about Georgia, but we've been able to say it this year. Their defense has held every team to 18 or less. Is that the kind of game we get Saturday? One thing's obvious to me about Tennessee. This one could go so many different directions. This is not a game that I would guarantee will be close. A lot of times when you're walking into the stadium, you know how you'll see a fan of the opposing team and you'll say, it should be a good one either way. I'm not going to say that. Either one of these teams could win by 3 touchdowns Saturday. Neither would surprise me. Really high variance game. Tennessee could blow this game open. And here's what it would take. It would take nothing more than Nico Iamaleava hitting the deep shots that Josh Heupel has been calling and will continue to call. You remember that game a few weeks ago in Knoxville, they were playing Bama, and there were a ton of wide open guys running in that Bama secondary. And Nico finally hit one of them. It felt like half a dozen were there that he missed. Hit a couple last week. Does he hit a couple or 3 or 4 of those this week? Ole Miss had several 20-plus yard plays last week. Some of them were on the ground, some of them through the air. Tennessee can do that better than them. And the reason I mentioned Nico is because if he does that, if he pops just one of them early, and that loosens Georgia's defense up, this should be Dylan Sampson's moment. Tennessee has not run the ball highly effectively against Georgia since Heupel's been there. They were okay last year, but the last 3 times this Tennessee team has come to Athens, 2.6 yards per carry, 0 yards per carry, 2.2 yards per carry. It's really a feast or famine moment for Tennessee because the glass half full scenario in your mind, you could envision Nico hitting some deep shots early and then Heupel just calling the game he would normally call, and Georgia feels like they're a step behind defensively, and Tennessee takes the crowd out of it, and Tennessee starts getting Georgia really uncomfortable because they're finally playing their best offensive game of the season. That could happen. What also could happen is what's happened to Tennessee many times this year. They go into the half scoreless. Either one of those things could happen. Like you're going to have a hard time selling me definitively that you know which way this is going to go. Tennessee is a big drop-off on the road team. That, to me, is why this would be their biggest win under Heupel after the 2022 Bama game. This would be bigger than anything he's done there because they've been different away from home. If they can go on the road and get this one, it is a real landmark program-defining win for them. Here's something else that's pretty glaring to me. Tennessee's got a significant third down edge both ways in this matchup. Tennessee's offense is top 40 in converting them. Georgia's defense is 92nd in the country in third down conversions allowed. Georgia's offense is 83rd in the country in third down conversion rate, and Tennessee's defense is number 2. So if that stat profile holds, this point spread makes no sense. Does it hold? Colin, let's take a look at what the model thinks. Model is almost in line with FanDuel. FanDuel's got Georgia minus 9.5. Our model has Georgia minus 8.5. I think there are some significant edges for Tennessee in this game. But I'll tell you what else I can't shake out of my mind. I got so much respect for the competitive makeup of Georgia's program. Not necessarily this year's team. They've been competitive. I'm not saying they hadn't been competitive. They just haven't been vintage Georgia at times, which is not the biggest crime in the world. That's the way the sport's supposed to work. You have ebbs and flows. You're not supposed to just be elite every year. But there's a resolve, there's a mettle, there's a competitive character that is synonymous with Georgia football under Kirby Smart that will not allow me to envision them losing this game Saturday. And I see several edges for Tennessee in the game. I'm telling you, I see several edges, and there is a world where Tennessee bends that thing crooked in the second half. My respect for Georgia's competitive character as a program will not allow me to fully go there. Tennessee's being given way too many points, in my opinion. I will take Tennessee in the points. It is one of my best bets of the week. But Georgia's going to win this football game. Somehow, some way, Georgia's going to win this football game. I say somehow, some way like it's a coin flip. According to odds makers, it's not. But, man, it is in my mind. And so I am taking Tennessee plus the points. Plus 9.5 is one of the Ramen Noodle Express bets of the week. But you give me Georgia to win, and I don't think anyone in that fan base cares one iota. As long as they get this win, I don't really think they care by how many. Hold on a second. Okay, so really big breaking news in the year right as we wrap up the segment. Okay, so this changes things. And it's a good thing Jesse told me this. Jesse told me this right before we were going to move on. So news, like as we're talking, Nico not expected to play. That's Chris Felica, right? All right, so Chris Felica reporting Nico Iamaleava not expected to play, which was different than what we were hearing earlier on today as Tennessee starting quarterback. That is a total game changer. That, I believe, will move that number because I do not think that was baked in. I don't think that was baked in at all. So I'll tell you what we'll probably do is we'll probably Jesse, how definitive does that sound? Okay. All right, so we're live. Like, obviously, we're live. So here's what I'll do. I'll leave my prediction as is for now. Luckily, we have a Thursday show coming up. So that'll be cleared up by the time we do the Thursday show. So as of now, I'll stick with Georgia wins, Tennessee covers, but we're writing it in pencil. Forget this. This is not a pen. We're writing it in pencil, and then we will adjust accordingly. What would have made me really mad is had we done the show and then that news pops afterwards, because that happens occasionally as well. We'll be there either way.